Ladies and gentlemen, today I have the pleasure to welcome a photographer, Mr. Sebastian Kowalski. Mr. Sebastian, thank you very much for joining me on the Human Rights Tree.
Alpha, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm, always yeah, amazed the great work you're doing. So it's my pleasure to be a part of it as of right now.
Thank you. Today's conversation will be based on your work as a photographer. But before we start talking about the topic, I would like to know where were you born? And
I
can you
was.
tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about your background, your country, and your roots?
I was born in Poland, very close to Krakow. For those who have ever visited Poland and Krakow, so I was born in kind of like a miniature version of Krakow, a town called Myślenice. With a nice history, established in 1364, if I remember well from my history classes.
Mm.
I mentioned this because I was always this uh, the historical background someplace in my life. I love where I was born. I love Krakow and the histories related to this place. And maybe in the short, I guess my professional background or educational background, I studied international relation, and then I also graduated from media and journalism at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow. And eventually, after graduating, I worked for some times as a full-time radio journalist. And also, I mentioned this because at that time, I kind of a venture into photography. And of course, as a teenager or like old teenager, I have this cool dream to be a world traveling photographer. So therefore, the international relation and journalism. But then I got hired as a radio journalist, so that's how I end up in that journalistic field. And but then eventually I moved to United States, and since then, since 2005, I've been living here in United States. So, but still visiting my homeland, visiting Poland quite often, and since my whole family is there, and traveling a lot as I can. So here in United States, I work in two jobs. I do two jobs. I work as a medical interpreter for the state hospital here in Chicago, and I also work as a photographer, as a freelancer photographer. So that's like kind of a leftover of my journalistic field. I do travel on medical and humanitarian mission and photograph over there.
Um, can you recall the first time you pick up a, a camera?
Well,
And what?
first time.
Yeah, go ahead.
First time ever. I think that was an old quirky Kodak camera given to me by my dad when I think I was a five years old, I think, or something like that. Maybe 6 years old. I remember he brought it from one of from where he was abroad, and I say quirky because that was the camera actually brought from United States when they were trying to start the new format, not 36 millimeter. And unfortunately, in Europe, in Poland, you could not buy such a film. It was a little smaller size of the film that 36 millimeter. So it was quite interesting that my photographer career as a child was very brief and short because uh, I think my dad just gave me the camera with two rolls of film, not knowing that this kind of a film cannot be bought in Poland or anywhere else in Europe because that was some kind of a format they were promoting in the United States, and eventually they give up quite quickly. So yeah, I as a child I remember I just the every shot was like gold because you knew that this is not you're not gonna have a another roll of film because of those technicalities. So yeah, so that was my first ever camera, and I used it for maybe like 24 shots or whatever the film was, and it stay in the drawer for the rest of my childhood because
Mhm.
you could not buy such a film for this camera anywhere around. So that was the very first time I had a camera in my hands, and then more consciously, I may say so. I was a young teenager. I think I bought it from my allowance money, like pocket money, or maybe I got it for some, birthday. I got a small point and shoot camera with regular format 36 millimeter film, so I was able to take more pictures. And those are times of the film when you were still limited by the number of frame on the film to take pictures. And I think that was the very first time. So at the beginning it started just like documenting um reality, like important thing. It's not like today with the phone cameras, we snap away every single day pictures back in the day. So every shot was celebrated in a way because you use the camera with the film only for important occasion. And such an important occasion with travels, right? As a teenager, when you start traveling, this you open up your eyes for the outside world, even if those were not international travel at first. So that's where I started using camera. And then eventually when uh, I I would say consciously, when I fell in love with photography was when I was older teenager, and with me and a group of my friends, we were going on hiking trips and discovering, exploring mountains and the nature. And I think that's for the first time when I realized that photography is something I can really relate to, and I'm very visual, I would say. And yeah, that's how it started, I think. Yeah. And then when I was 20, quite late, I would say, maybe, yeah, I think I was 20 when I bought my first, like, a real deal camera from some money I saved from the summer job. And with exchangeable lenses, and it was Nikon. And that was like, wow, boom, like something just completely change. And because then you had the lenses, you have a aperture, you could create. Yeah, before, when I was using the point and shoot, you're very limited. But then with more advanced cameras, with more advanced lenses, and as I started educating myself on photography, and learning and reading more, and looking at photographers' work, I really want to be, I want to do that. Yeah, I think that's where I really, I would say, created that idea that I want to be a photographer.
So, as you indicated, you grew up around Krakow, and
Hmm.
Krakow is a city that is in Poland. Can you
Hmm.
just take out more specific? How was life growing up um, uh, in Krakow, and how Krakow is different from other cities in Poland? And many people also hear about Poland. Can you share a few cultural differences or national identity of Poland, and how were you able
Um,
to catch them as a
hmm.
photographer?
Hmm. Well, I mentioned that because I really think that the environment you growing up, or people you growing up around, and environment and cities, or towns, or villages or nature you're growing up, they really have a huge influence on us later on in life. They shape, not entirely, but actually at least partially, who we became as a grown up and fully formed human. So I mentioned Krakow, and my hometown. It's kind of a, like, we both live in Chicago. So I grew up like kind of a Evanston to Chicago. So that's how I grew up in Myślenice, close to, in proximity to Krakow. And then I eventually moved for the school, and that's where I live in Krakow. So it has huge influence because this is our former capital. The Poland officially became the modern country in 966 year when we got baptized. Yeah, we got Christianity that year. Of course, we existed as a country even way before, but officially as a modern medieval country, that was the 10th century. So um, you have more than 1,000 year of countryship, if I may say so, of the history. And like I say, the history is even longer before the Christianity in Poland. So Krakow was our it was our former capital until 17th century. I don't want to. There was a second official. There was the first smaller capital, the small town, and they eventually moved it to Krakow. And for centuries, that was our capital. There was a castle over there. The king reside over there, and so there's all those centuries of history. And Krakow is also unique as far as Poland because was untouched during both wars. So like Warsaw was complete, our current capital was completely razed to the ground during World War II, by Germans, then Russian move in and everything. Krakow, because of his cultural significance, because of the beauty of the city, with the old buildings, castle and everything. It seems like whoever invaded Poland for centuries, they always want to keep Krakow for themselves. So they were not really like trying to burn this down or bomb or anything. So the significance of Krakow is, important also in the broader spectrum as a worldwide, because I think in 70s when United Nations started so-called UNESCO list. So, UNESCO list, the list of the world cultural and, historical sites. One of as a founding list, I don't remember, it was like at the beginning, the first year when they started that list, all over the world, there was only very few places put on as originally, but one of the original three places put were actually from Poland, which was significant. Out of like maybe 10 or 12, three of them were from Poland. And one of them was actually not one building or just a castle or anything else like that, but the whole medieval center of Krakow. So if you go to Krakow, you can still see the actual city within the city, especially when the bird's view. If you go in the like a tourist trip in a balloon, you can still see the shape of actual how the city, where was the border of the city from like 11th or 12th century. There's a still remaining of the defending wall. So all of this historical significance, I think, influenced me in that way, that growing up over there or being a teenager and then study over there and then work at the radio station, you are surrounded by art, by culture, by things which were created for more than 1,000 years in certain cases. The oldest church is from 11th century, if I remember very well. So I think, and because you are growing up in this, like beautiful visual settings, even though sometimes, the settings can be, I was born and grew up I mean, and as a child on the verge of like transition from the communism to free market. Poland was the first one to overthrow the communists in 1989. So even though the communist reality was kind of a gray and gloomy, there was no commercial, there was no colorful ads all over the streets on billboard or anything like that. Still Krakow had that significance of just being a beautiful historical artistic city. So even though the capital, sometimes we say that was actually a good thing, that one of our king whose line came from Sweden and he wanted to be closer to Sweden, he moved the capital from Krakow to Warsaw, to the center of Poland, which also geographically makes sense. but we actually, some people don't like him because he moved the capital, the significance from Krakow to Warsaw. But some people think that because of that, Krakow maintained that this unique atmosphere and this bohemian artistic spirit, which I really think that has a huge influence on who I am right now and what I love, like visually and artistically. So that's why, just being a young teenager when you're just creating ideas of what you want to do, who you want to be, and when you are strolling those, cobblestone, uh, old street, when they're, like I say, with 1,000 years of history, and you're passing out those beautiful historical buildings, that's definitely have a influence on my world view of the way I was looking at the world. And also, like I said, there was a Krakow was put on UNESCO list. The other thing is another beautiful thing that's complete site information is Salt Mine Wieliczka, which is like 20 minutes drive from Krakow, which used to belong to our king, and it's a beautiful salt mine underground. I highly recommend whoever go to Poland to go to that salt mine, because again, this is something which the salt mine which was working for 1,000 years. So you go underground and you see how they were taking out salt, which was worth as much as gold, because it was so rare in Europe at that time before they discovered the way to trade with India or with Asia, or then eventually with Americas. The main spice in Europe was salt. Yeah, so that's why it was so important for food, right? And the third part is Auschwitz, the German concentration camp, so that's this very little, this small area of Poland has a huge historical and cultural significance. And we are also very close to the mountain, which there are mountains on the border of Poland and Slovakia, Tatra Mountains, beautiful. They look like Alps. They come from the same geological era. They're just a little smaller. But I mentioned this also because, yeah, that's I would just say that I was in a way influenced by nature and the history and art, and so um, Krakow is still called our cultural capital of Poland because there's a lot of universities, a lot of young people, a lot of art, a lot of theaters, a lot of art schools. So all of that, makes you kind of, especially when you're young, we soaking all influence like a sponge, and I think that's why this. The place where I was born, and I think that comes for everybody, has a significant importance in your later life.
Yeah. As you indicated, at those days, the camera have limited films, so you don't just go and randomly take any kind of pictures. And I was wondering, as a young photographer in Krakow, what was your main interest? Was it to take pictures of people, or the sceneries, or the food? What was very more fascinating for you, and what um, trigger your attention to be in love with photography?
I think I started as majority probably of photographers. So first, I think when you have a camera, and I also think that it's apply even right now to the digital, when we are not limited by the numbers of frame. But I think if you are visual, we we just start paying attention to the beauty of the surrounding world. And I think that's beauty for different people, it's a different thing, right? Some, as you mentioned, some people can be enchanted by the beautiful landscape, by the mountains, some by the sunset. I know people who just you know uh, as a maniacs, they take millions pictures of sunset. And I think that that's the great thing about a photography, that I believe that it channel your inner interest in beauty. It's what's beautiful for you. I know people who are mesmerized by decay, they love to photograph like old abandoned buildings, right? And in a way, this is something which I find interesting as well. So once again, I think with me, how it started, I think when I started, when I consciously pick up the camera, when we were going with friends, so like I said, it started very traditionally. You go someplace with the friends, and there are some good memories. You're having fun, and at the beginning, you just taking pictures of the group pictures of all the friends at the top of some mountains or something like that. But those are the candidates and the pictures which we take at first, and then you start exploring your interests, and then you finding what you love in a way. Some people love flowers, some people love, like I say, landscape or animals. And I think at the beginning I was drawn to the landscape, to the nature in a way, because when, like I say, I consciously pick up the camera when me and a group of my friends got into mountaineering, nature, mountains, climbing later on. I used to climb a lot. So then you are there in the awe of the nature surrounding you on those big mountains or big rocky walls and everything. And that's what I started taking pictures of at the beginning. And then once you see this, you just trying to see it differently. And I think that's what is important in general for everybody in the photography. Not only you will find out naturally what's the subject which moves your heartbeat faster, right? What you love to photograph. But what is the most important thing, I think, is to find your own vision, your own point of view. Because what is fascinating for me as far as photography, that you can put 5, 10 people in front of the same tree, and the question is, you know you can take the pictures of the same tree or anything building in a straightforward, maybe sometimes boring way, but they are pictures with a different point of view. So I think that my strength was to kind of develop my own way of seeing and things, and that's what I love about the photography, that you can find the magic and beauty in anything, in really anything. And sometimes I also feel guilty because I do, when I travel and I go to places, or I photograph for some humanitarian mission, and some people live in the very dire and difficult condition, but yet you can photograph that in a very beautiful way, and create a very aesthetically great looking image, which sometimes is amazing. Sometimes maybe I feel like you are not showing the whole story. So yeah, but I think that's how it started. It started with nature, and then eventually I think I went through all phases. All photographers are going through. It's interesting. Like my biggest inspiration, he unfortunately passed away recently, was Brazilian, very well known photojournalistic photographer. We share the same name, Sebastião Salgado. And not many people knew that he started, like any other photographer. He needed to make money first, so he photographed some portraits, weddings, and also some nude photography. So I went through all of this. I photograph all kind of a subject, and I will still do. But I definitely started with nature, and then eventually I discovered that the love of taking pictures of people, because sometimes you can take the beautiful picture of a street, or of building or the castle, or anything, and it's lacking the human element. And I'm still guilty of that. When I travel, I still am amazed by something, by some beautiful temple, or beautiful landscape, and I do photograph those things in the most, for me, from my point of view, the most interesting way. But then, where if I say so, my heart lies, and it's human. I am most happy with taking a picture, portraits of
Of
people,
people. Mm.
and I feel like that's how we connect as a photographer. That's how I connect to human the best when they are in front of my camera.
I see. As you indicated, you went to school studying journalism. In your studies of journalism, did you happen to study photography, or you are a self-taught person?
I would say that I'm a hybrid.
Okay.
So because I pick up the interest in photography when like I told you, I was teenager, and I did not study journalism right away. But I studied photography on my own. Yeah, and I think right now this generation is so fortunate that you have this free access and instant access to all the tutorial or the Instagram roles and ideas and everything. So it's so much easier, and because of the digital photography, it's so much easier to study with trial and errors, right? You take a pictures, you see the instant outcome of the image you took, and you can correct and everything. Me, I was still like this old old school generation that you had to pick up the book on photography or a magazine on photography or and read. There was no really when I was really young, when I started, uh, being interested in photography, you didn't have all the online resources which young people have right now, young photographers, and the instant access to so many images right now that so I think I went the traditional route, and also it's very interesting, as I mentioned before. So I educated myself quite a lot before I started studying journalism. So we did have, as a part of the journalism, because there was no specific, photojournalistic, program only, but a part of the journalism education was the radio workshop, the photography workshop, and all kind of a traditional journalism, right? The writing and recording, and also filming and photography. There was the TV class, the radio class, the photography class. So I I attended, of course, the classes as a part of my university training.
Mhm.
But I think I was actually quickly let go of that class because my teacher realized that I know more than she can teach me at that point. Yeah, like
I see.
technically.
Mhm.
But what I think it is important, and I feel like this is, and it's also it's fantastic thing about a photography, that it's not like condensed, A to Z knowledge which you learn, and then there is nothing else you can learn about the photography. Because, and I'm not, and also, of course, technically there is some, basic you learn, and those apply for years, and they won't probably never change the basic technical, skills of a photographer. But then I feel like we learning our life, because the photography, again, for me, it's not. Once you get the technicality, you know how to use camera, you know how to use aperture lenses and everything else. All the photographers know that, and some are more technically skilled, some less. But I think photography for me at this point, and long time ago, stopped being about the technicalities, but it's more about the point of view and what you wanna show or say or tell people, the viewers, with your image. So it's more about that, yeah. And we but, well, I think I don't want to. Maybe that was Ansel Adams, the greatest American photographer. One of those. I don't remember exactly where to say that we not taking pictures with the camera. We're taking pictures with all of our experiences, our stories, everything we've seen and read and watched, all the movies, because that's create our point of view and our way of viewing, and that's so very true. Because I find sometimes, surprisingly, maybe sometimes consciously I do it, sometimes unconsciously, I find references in my own images to book I've read, to movies I watch, and all to paintings or any other piece of artwork I've seen, and that's actually one of the greatest advice as far as of like developing yourself as a photographer. I've heard from some other well-known photographer that don't get caught up on technicalities, or like aperture, time, this and that and that, and how good is that lens, how bad is that camera. Just go out and study the great masters of painting, because when you go to the art museum and you look at the paintings, that's the way to study how they use the lights, how they use the perspective, how they use the composition, and that's how you want to learn how to properly compose the image, how to properly use the light, the natural light, or light of the camera or something. So I think, like I say again, to answer your question, yes, I did formally. I was For the part of that, I was self-taught. For the part, I did attended some photography classes as a part of my university. But I think that this is an everlasting learning process. It just basically it's I think it's like being a writer in a way. You go to school, you learn the grammar, you learn the vocabulary, then you learn the basic of writing, of composing the book. But then ultimately the book is either about your imagination, which was created by everything else in your life, or about your experiences. So I think the photography is the same way. Once you get the technicalities, either learn at school or learn on your own, then it's all depends on who you are and your experience and what you've seen, and what is important for you.
I see. In the process of learning, you mentioned technicalities. For somebody who is new into photography, what is the basic technicalities you need to know to be a better photographer? Is one question. Further, you mentioned about a Brazilian photographer, Sebastian. It's my first time hearing about him. How do you, how your meeting with him come started? How did you know about that Brazilian photography as a person who live in Poland?
Um, okay, so the
The first is
photography,
the
it's
technicalities.
right. So the photography, in a very short, is about the relation between the time and the light. So you have those two variables, time and light, the most important. And in a way, if we go more metaphysically, those are probably the most important things in our life, right? We have a time on this earth and we are surrounded by light or darkness. So, but just putting this metaphysic aside, that's the technicalities of photography. And those basic hasn't changed no matter what. If we go into like the 19th century, the beginning of the camera obscura, and then film camera, and now digital camera, those basic hasn't changed. We used to have the film, which was the light sensitive emulsion, right?
Mm.
And now we have the digital sensor, which are light sensitive. So you open up the lens, the shutter for the moment in time, whatever you want to record, and then the light comes on that, either digital sensor or the light sensitive film, strip of film. And then depend on how long you let the light come to that sensor or film, you either have underexposed, overexposed, or properly exposed image. So those are the very basics. So you just need to right now with digital or with the phone, we don't pay people don't pay attention to that because everything happened, automatically. When I was starting, and that's how I think people should, if they really think seriously about photography, that's how they should educate themselves. Just play with manual setting. You not necessarily have to use the film camera, even with digital camera, but just don't do the uh, automatic setting. If you want to learn something, do the manual and just play with that idea. You can there is an aperture in the lens. Yeah, there's like a small little hole which you open either bigger or smaller, and that allow the light to hit the sensor, right? Let's stick to digital. So that's sensor. And then, you're gonna set the time for how long you let the light to come in. And then you will see if you expose, if you underexpose, if the image is properly exposed. So I think those are the two technicalities, with like a basic one, with everybody should understand, even for the sake of taking pictures with the phone cameras. Like I say, they are very sophisticated right now, all automatic and everything, so people don't even think about it. But it's good to know that the photography, it's all about light and time, in a way. So once you get that basic idea, then you can play with that and be more creative, because obviously the same image uh, of the let's say uh, football player, right? If you expose it for very short time, you're going to freeze the moment in time, and he will be frozen in trying to throw some ball or something. But if you expose it in a few seconds, you're going to have a blur image which will tell the story of the movement, of the rush, so yeah. And then there comes the lights. You want some image to look very light, you overexpose a little bit. Even with your iPhone camera, you want it to look a little serious or grim or something. You just use the less lights and you underexpose to make it darker. So once again, in a very brief thing, just learn the forget about the automatic setting. If anybody want to improve or just think seriously about photography or be more creative with the photography, just grab any either super cheap right now, some old film camera or some older digital cameras. They are super cheap, like the same thing with old computers. So, and they are still pretty decent. So grab them and play with the idea of picking different time and different amount of light, and see how this is going to work. And then the third thing, it's aperture, meaning the depth of field. So as you know, sometimes you can take a pictures of portraits of somebody. You see the face is in the focus and the background is blurred. Yeah. Or you can take the same pictures that everything is sharp in focus. So that's the third thing which you should pay attention to. But like I said, again, just first understand the relation between time and light.
And you
As far
mentioned
as Sebastião Salgado, how I got to know him, I mean, I wish I've met him personally. Unfortunately, I haven't. You know what? That was the process. Getting back to Krakow again. Like I told you, there was a city of culture, of art, of all those ideas, and I think for the first time I came across his photography at the WordPress photo exhibition. So once a year, there's a WordPress photo award, and the most, the photographer get award in a different categories. Just the humanitarian, the people, the landscape, sports, so on, so on. And I think, and one of this year when I went to see that exposition, yeah, I saw images of Sebastião Salgado, and they were striking images. I mean, they're amazing black and white images. He always photographed. I think in a later age, when I think he died right now at the age of 80 or 81. So in later stage of his life, he started eventually using digital, I was told. But he, for most of the life, even though there was already digital photography very popular, he was shooting film and he was shooting black and white. And that's also the time when I was switching my subject from like just the pretty pictures of landscape, mountains, flowers, blah blah blah, into more of a photojournalistic approach, into taking pictures of people. And that's what was amazing about Sebastião Salgado for me, that he photographed people in such incredible way that you could not just walk by, unattached. I mean, like unmoved by his images. So his images, some of them were really, from humanitarian point of view, were really terrifying because he was showing, like he worked on several series. Like I remember there was a series of like work and showing the people all around the world working in a different conditions. Sometimes, working on the oil field or working in some, African illegal mines of diamonds and so on. So, but he showed them. When you look at his images, I highly recommend to look them up in black and white. They are, that this is a scene from the real life, but it looks like a beautiful painting. And what I'm personally proud of, as far as of my photography and images, that several times when I exhibit my images or I use them for some humanitarian, reasons, people who saw the images or bought them, they were telling me that some of my images look like paintings, and I think that was the great one of the greatest compliment. And well, I think I would say that, in my life I heard three greatest compliment as far as my photography. So one was, I've heard several times that some of my images look like paintings, and I was happy about it because that's how I told you, I educate myself looking at the paintings and artwork of people better than me, and more talented as far as the paintings or photography. Then I've heard several times when I was a part of some exhibition, when we on purpose we didn't divide the work of several photographers. We just mixed them, so my pictures were mixed among other photographer pictures, and some of people who knew my photography would come and say, I know which pictures are yours, even though they didn't see them before, and they were like pointing, "This is yours, this is yours, this is yours." And I was amazed by that because they say, "Well, I know your style." So I mentioned this because I think that I am very proud of that. That in a way I developed my own style, and that
Mhm.
it's maybe I wouldn't be so ego maniac to say that it's very unique. But if people who know my photography can later on, from the hundreds of different pictures, pick the one I took, that shows me that I do have a way of showing the reality, and the way of my own style, and that's what is important, I would say, to any new aspiring photographer, to work and develop your own style and your own way of seeing reality. And the third is actually in regards to Sebastião Salgado. I did do some black and white work in Dominican Republic and on one of my humanitarian trip, and I show it to one of the photographer just randomly. I was at the friend's wedding. I show it to the wedding photographer I started chatting with at that wedding, and he looked at my Instagram feed, and some of my pictures were posted on Instagram, and he looked, he's like, "Oh, your picture remind me of this photographer, this Brazilian photographer." And I start smiling and say, "Sebastião Salgado." So that was another greatest compliment, that in a way I was maybe not emulate or copy, but yeah, so that shows you how being influenced by something or someone,
Mm.
later on it's gonna bring the fruits of your own work. So that was one of the greatest compliment, that few of my images were told that they look like you know taken by Sebastião Salgado, and I was like,
I see. Um, Eventually, in your journey, as a young photographer, you decided to um, leave your home country, Poland, and come to United States. Can you share a little bit about that journey? Why you decided to leave your country, and why? How was your journey um, moving to United States of America?
That's the very interesting question. I always say that I end up here by accident, which is kind of a true. So when I graduated from international relation, but I was still a student at the Jagiellonian University. I was still a student of journalism, and I took the sabbatical year with my girlfriend at that time. She was a medical school student, and we want to before graduating and before, like, start going to work and not being a student anymore, we wanted to practice English, and she wanted to go for, use that 1 year break to go to England to study English. And I've been to United States, to Chicago before, and I convinced her to come here. So we end up in Chicago, and we took English as a second language classes here in Chicago.
When
And
was it?
before our, I'm
When
sorry,
was it? Which year was it?
when? Oh my God, you're gonna ask me how old I am now.
No.
That was so. I moved to Chicago 2000, almost 20 years ago. I think that was the 2005. So that was definitely like 2002, 2003,
Okay.
and then so yeah, after we finished that time at the college, taking classes, we hit the road. I didn't think that I'm gonna come back to United States anytime soon. Like I said, I spent almost a year here on visa, and we just did the road trip, the Route 66, Chicago to LA and back,
Mm.
and just to see as much United States as we could, because I was thinking that I'm moving back to Poland, and I'm going to be working as a journalist or doing something else. I was not planning. There was no plan for me to move to United States.
Mm.
And but before we left, my girlfriend, like I said, I mentioned that she was a medical student. She decided that she would love to continue her medical career here in United States. So we applied for so-called green card lottery, and and um, and we go back, we went back to Poland. We broke up. I started working at the radio station, and one of these days I received a big envelope from Uncle Sam, who say, "We want you." I won
I
the
see.
green card. Yeah.
I see.
So, and like I say, I was not really so crazy about moving here to United States, because I didn't, and I still don't have any family here. And Poland was already part of European Union. So if I want to, travel abroad, I could travel, or move to any place in Europe at that time. So there was no more limitation as far as, where I can live and work. And but and I had a good job. I was a journalist in Krakow, which, like I say, it's a cool city, and I had a cool job, and yeah, so there was no plan for me to move to United States. The only problem was that when they give you the immigration visa, when you win it through the lottery, I think you have 12 months to go through the whole process and enter US soil. If you don't do it, you lose it. And so I guess at some point I started thinking, maybe I should just do it to get the green card and just to have it. And but around that time when I was going through the process, you have to go to embassy, do all the paperwork, they check your criminal background, your educational background, your health, blah, 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 before you actually, your passport is stamped with the immigration visa. Uh, During that period, I got promoted at the radio station. There was a part of big media company, the biggest in the Central Eastern Europe, and I got moved. So with my job, how it's a big corporation, they just sometimes move you around where they need you. Then I asked, what if I don't want to leave Krakow, where all my friends and my family was Krakow and around Krakow. So all my life was there, this part of Poland. And they say, well, if you don't want to move, we'll find somebody who will, basically telling me that if you're not gonna move, they promoted me, they pay me more, but you say if you're not gonna move with it, you're gonna lose the job, yeah. And so I moved, and I always say for people to have like the reference, it's like I moved from you live and work in New York, the cool city, and they nothing against Detroit, but they move you to Detroit, the former industrial town. So
Mm.
that's where I was moved from really cool historical artsy and fun city Krakow to like this all the industrial town a couple hours drive from Krakow, where they have a headquarters, because it was former mining industry town, and there was nothing really to do over there except work. And I decided that this is not how I want to live my life. And I gave them 2 weeks notice after, I went there, I tried, and I wasn't happy, I guess, where with the new place where I'm going to be working, and that also, if I didn't have a green card, I would probably stay there, because you do have to have a work, right, to support yourself. And but yeah, I think that was the moment when I decided, okay, I don't want to be there. If I stay in Krakow, I wouldn't probably move. I'm not sure if I move to United States for good. I would probably come to United. That was the plan. I'm gonna come to United States, get the stamp, get the green card, and then I'm gonna be going back and forth, keeping my journalistic career in Poland. But so yeah, so initially I moved here, and for a couple of years I was going back and forth. I'm not still sure where I want to be. And for years I thought that I'm just here for a couple of years. After 3 years, like all my family thought that I just, I studied international relations, so I always want to leave someplace abroad, just for the heck of it, to experience the multicultural, different way of life, different country, different culture, different people. I was always uh, interested in that, and enjoy it a lot, and I still do enjoy. And I think I enjoy Chicago for that very reason, that it's very multicultural, that it's you can find people from all over the world, all of the culture, and all walk of life. So that's how my first few years went, back and forth. And then after 3 years, I was like, okay, I need 2 more years to get a passport. I was still planning to move back, maybe not to Poland, but maybe to Europe, go back. Um, but then I realized, then I decided that I want to have a U.S. passport
Citizenship.
citizenship, because with green card, if you move for and you leave United States for longer than a year, you can lose the green card. And then, funny, after 5 years, you just kind of establish here, you have friends, you have jobs, you have girlfriend, and then I guess after 5 years, I felt like, I have to stay a little longer.
I see.
And then at some point, you are staying here for so long that moving back to Poland or moving back to Europe would be like re-immigrating again and starting all over again. And yeah.
So, in your early days, how was the photography scene in in Chicago? And were you able to choose photography as a profession, or you have to balance to make a living?
Well, you know what? I That's a very good question, because I know a lot of people here, Americans, not like, me, immigrant Americans who follow their dreams, who study photography, got into that. They went to the great school, let's say, Columbia College, to study photography. But here in America, the universities are very expensive. So people who got into that, or I know even people who were not able to finish their photography school, and they never had a chance to work as a photographer, because frankly, this is the very, I would say, very tough profession to support uh, yourself, because a lot of people wants to be a photographer. A lot of young people, just enjoy, it's kind of a, like, I would say maybe not so much, but like if you want to be an artist, anything artistically related, it's there are people who are highly successful, but there's very few of them. And I read statistic right now, so somebody was saying that it's easier in the United States to become famous and rich and support yourself from being an actor or actress than being a photographer. So that gives you an idea. There's, you or anybody else would have a problem, naming a few famous photographers, and you won't have a problem naming a lot of famous, movie stars or singers or something. So I would just say that as far as supporting yourself, photography is one of the toughest you know jobs to go into, and quite often, we have to put our dreams and the hopes on the side. And if you want to support yourself from photography, it's has to be, from the commercial photography, so the taking pictures of things which you may not were thinking at first that you're going to be doing. Like, here, especially in Chicago, a lot of photographers are supporting themselves from the wedding photography or like portrait photography, family photography. Those are things which are, paying their bills. Not, and the same thing happened to me. So it's not necessarily, it's a very, very, very few photographers who can travel the world and live off of that, of pictures of people around the world, or like, being like Sebastião Salgado, who was very, you know. So yeah, it's a tough profession. So I highly discourage everyone who would like to make a living as a photographer. There are, bunch of other jobs you can make it a good living, and so much easier. So yeah, that was a very good question. So when I started, uh, I was when I moved to Chicago, I was thinking about continuing in the field of the radio journalism. I even went to NPR here at Navy Pier, and but at that time, I showed them my CV where I work, and they were very impressed. And but they offer me, full time, I'm unpaid internship, and since I didn't have any family or anybody to support me. And I also, when you come at the beginning, even though I spoke English relatively well, but radio station, it's a whole different ball, to be able to work as a radio, to be really working at the radio station in your not in your native language, yeah. So I think for two reasons I give up on radio at that time, because of, I was not sure that my English is good enough. Yeah, so my insecurities, I may say, and accent and so on, and also it was full-time unpaid job, and I had to support myself. So that's how I started doing commercial photography. I realized that there is no accent in photography, right? It's all visual, so it doesn't matter how good or bad is my English, and if I have an accent or I mispronounce something, what matters is how my images looks like. So I started working as a photographer. I was lucky enough to, as my international relation, for sometimes I was working at Rotary International in Evanston for Rotarians, and that's where I met this really nice Polish photographer lady who works there, and she works in the field. I would love to, in the work full time, and she does that for the organization. That's a humanitarian organization, so she photographed for them. But there were no opening for photographers over there. But I through her I met another wonderful lady who owned who became my mentor and friend here for years. Unfortunately, she uh, passed away a couple of years ago. She owned like high-end portrait and wedding studio, and I started shooting for her this commercial photography. So that's how I started making
What is
money photography here in
what is
Chicago
her
for the first
name?
time.
What is her name?
Oh, it was Margaret Busk.
Okay.
She like I said, she had a studio, then she retired, and unfortunately, because of, she passed away because of a cancer. So that was, but that's, I would say that that's, besides me following some other photographers, I admire their work. That was the person who influenced me the most, like a real life person. I met here, and I worked for her, and we, like I say, we became a friends, and that was definitely um uh someone who I own a lot, as far as she was super open and she always support new younger photographer. So uh, amazing person. So I was lucky to meet her. But to answer your question, photography was always freelancing job for me. So I work either for freelancing for some studios, for other photographer, or later on I started working for myself, and I started, hiring freelancing photographer for myself. As over the time you progress, you develop your skills in your business and your clientele, but I also needed to complement my income. So I started doing the medical translation as well. So to answer your question, I would say again, I was the way I was educated as a photographer. I call myself hybrid photographer because I am self-taught and also I have formal education. And the same thing as an income, I would say that I am hybrid.
I see.
So I always was juggling the two jobs, the so-called real job, daytime job, and the photography job. Yeah, but
That's
that's gives me some kind of an independence. I'm sorry to interrupt you, in a way that having a different income than the photography, was able to be more selective as far as my photography client, because I was not forced by the harsh reality that I do have to make a money, and then you photograph everything, or for as little money as somebody wants to pay. So I had that comfort of picking up the jobs, the photography jobs I really wanted.
as you know, you moved to Chicago, and Chicago is well known for having a big Polish community. Through your photography, were you able to catch the life of Polish living in Chicago?
That's a good question, and the simple answer would be no. Because you know what, I was always joking that we have the saying in Polish, you don't bring the wood to the forest. So I was just, why would I move from Poland to United States to stay in the Polish community, or to photograph, or to show interest in the Polish community? So I do, over the years, I do have some good friends. I didn't, maybe also because I did not have a family here in United States or in Chicago as well. In United States in general. So when I moved to United States, and on purpose, I immerse myself in this multicultural
Environment.
community, and so I want, because I want to practice my English. I want to, so I, on purpose, I kind of stay away from the Polish community, because I did not have a connection, family connection with them. Of course, like I say, over the years, because of this the fact of this Polish community existing here, I met some, and I had a great friendship with some Polish people. But to be quite honest, so, and at the beginning I was, participating in a Polish film festival. I was helping them, and then I went to like a Polish museum in America, and so I did have those connections. So I did few, jobs, or sometimes volunteer for them. But that was never my main intention, because I you know if I want to stay within this Polish, what is Polish, and around that topic, I would probably stay in Poland. So I definitely moved to Chicago, because I want to experience the different culture, different nations. So in that way, it's not like I was avoiding, but I'd never really show like a deeper desire to be involved. Like I said, at the beginning, I was, yeah, and for a few years, but then, yeah, definitely my main interest wasn't there.
Through your freelancing as a photographer, you did have the opportunity to travel in certain countries. Would you share few of your travelings and the countries, which countries, and how those countries and you going there taking pictures help you grow and learn as a photographer?
Um, yes, I think you know what we I think for every human, I would say that the travel and experiencing the different culture, different places, different points of view. It's crucial for our development as a human, and we should do that as much. I highly recommend everyone to just travel and get lost in the places they don't know, and that's a great way to discover yourself. Just to learn things about yourself and other people when you are facing the reality. You don't know something new, and you open your mind, and then we I think the problem these days with our world is that we do have access to everything. We can sit at home and watch on TikTok, on Instagram, every other corner of the world, but we do not really experience those things. And if you do not experience, if you don't go out to the world, if you are not exposed to the different, to something, people become very, you know, closed in their own opinion, in their own little world, and that create the intolerance and all the problem. The more we travel, the more we are open to strangers, to something unknown, the more we understand it. And the more we understand it, the less we fear it. And the less you fear something, the less aggressive and defensive you're gonna be to that different. I think that world, unfortunately, right now it's very divided into us and them. And I think the travel can uh, get rid of that division,
I
can
see.
actually connect us with them, with those different than us. Yeah. So in general, travels are extremely important for me, as a way of seeing the world, seeing others, seeing other human being, and also as a way of seeing myself. Because you see yourself in the other's eyes. So what can you, if you are stuck in your own life 24/7, 365 days a year, and you not take the step out into unknown, you think that what you do is the only way of doing things, of living and of being. And then if you travel, it doesn't really matter. You ask me, I'll definitely share some of my travels, but it doesn't really matter where you go, which country. There's no good or bad country to go to experience that. It's just wherever you go, you are being faced with something unfamiliar, unknown, and you have to learn to accept that and to understand in a way, because you are there, and that's how the people are living. And when you open your eyes to that, then it's easier to understand other human beings. So I think that the travels are amazing way, not only for photographers but for the human being, to go out and understand others. And I think that if we travel more, and I'm not talking about traveling to the resorts or all inclusive resorts, because then you are just being in a very like sterile environment, which has nothing or not much in common with actual countries and local people living over there. But sometimes just go to any country, go to Mexico, go to Canada, anywhere close, or go to, I don't know, Bahamas. I'm just throwing or even Puerto Rico, but go there. So I'm just throwing those names because you don't have to go far. You don't have to go to Southeast Asia or China, but just go to any country where people live different, and try to like go and walk the street, and just try to experience someone else's life. Don't stay, even if you go to the resorts, don't stay there all the time, or just don't go to the chain of restaurants, which from United States, but go and eat in the um,
Restaurant.
local restaurant with local people. I know there is always fear, and I faced it every single time. My greatest problem and fear is that I would love to communicate with people when I go there. So I know there's always problem. You go to Mexico, you don't speak Spanish, and you're thinking, how am I gonna go and walk the street and stop on the at the local cantina or local tienda to buy something or to eat something? There's always, just go and do it. You now, even without language, you will be able to communicate. There's a universal language, and this is amazing that no matter where we go, you will find out, no matter how exotic, if I was Southeast Asia and Africa or South America, there's this universal human language of smile, of body language, and we connect. It's so amazing how we connect. So I I counted once. I've been to more than 50 countries, and some of those countries I've been many times, and it's hard to single out any particular trips, but in general, I would say that's what I always try to do. Even if I like go with medical mission of one of the hospital here from Chicago, I go to Dominican Republic or to Haiti. So those are organized trips, and there's some goal, and we have to work. We do some certain. We want to achieve certain goals. So you do something, but still, I like to you know go astray. Get lost in the place where I am if I have some times, and just to explore and see how, and even without the language, to interact with local people. So I'm gonna give you a certain examples how those trips maybe changed me. Uh, and as like I say, any trip can be really eye-opening. If you are open, I think, yeah. So if you are open to the people and to new experiences, so any trip, like I say, Puerto Rico is a part of United States, but it's amazing if you go. I use this example as an example of something which is not that far and exotic, and you don't even need a passport to go there. You fly to San Juan, and you just rent the car and drive around the island, and go to like small towns across the islands, which are not the typical beach town where all the tourists goes, and you will discover that Puerto Rico has its own unique culture. It's not like in America, and a lot of people even don't speak English; they speak Spanish, and it's amazing. I remember we end up. I was there with my girlfriend. We end up in some cute small town, and there was a small tienda, small store where we want to buy some fruits, and nobody spoke English over there. And there was a little abuelita, and we were trying to communicate with our hands, gesture, smile, and then you really, you know, I was in a way, I mean, for a long time, I use this example of Puerto Rico because I travel, all over the world. And then some friends of mine in Chicago were asking me, why don't you go to Puerto Rico? And I said, nah, there's nothing exotic. I was even joking that if I want to go to Puerto Rico, I'm gonna go to Humboldt Park, right? Puerto Rican neighborhood. But once I went there, I fell in love with the island, and with the people living over there. And I find out how unique and how different they are. They're different even from Puerto Rican living in Humboldt Park in Chicago, and that's completely. So that's I would just say the closest, the cultural eye-opening trip which you can do without a passport, under the condition that you're not gonna stay in a hotel and just walk the touristy part of San Juan, and won't stay on the beach all the time in the kurort. I mean, like in the resorts, yeah. If you really go deeper, and you want to experience this, I love my travel through Vietnam, uh, and then Vietnam. I did it connecting Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, and those were amazing because of the historical significance. I learned so much about things I have no idea. that they happened. So you know about the Vietnam War, but I didn't know anything about what was happening and all the paper strip bombing of what Americans were doing in Laos, the secret CIA war, and how deeply that country got wounded, and nobody officially, there was no war between America and Laos, but they were bombed the hell out of it, and until this day the people are losing their lives and limbs because there's a bunch of bombs and mines and who never exploded since then, and they still actively trying to clear huge parts of the country from those things. Yeah, and that's something which I never knew. Nobody taught us at the history lesson, and then when you're there, you just finding out, oh my God, and then when I was in Cambodia, I learned about red khmers and what was going on over there, and that's terrifying. And I remember the people were so friendly, so nice, and you see all those cute people, you photograph them, and then you're thinking about it, oh my God, those people, one was the oppressor, one could have been the victim. This country for years was divided by red khmers, and millions, I think one quarter of the country was killed during that Red Khmer's regime, and there was the same people were doing, it was the same country, their own people. So those are things which, if you live in the comfort of your own life in the Western country, either in Poland or in any European country or in United States, you most of the people have never heard about it, that the millions people were killed, tortured, and what's happened over there. So yeah, so you can learn that sometimes beautiful stories, sometimes grim stories, but like I say, sometimes you need to go there, and then you need to stumble upon those stories, because if you and you need to go anywhere you go, like I said, to Puerto Rico, to Cambodia, or uh, I don't know, to Morocco, like I did a couple times, or to Tanzania, which I love, or like Zanzibar, the island of Zanzibar, that was another amazing trip. But you have to go with an open mind and try to learn something. So I am guilty of that I should study more those countries before I go to have more knowledge. Sometimes I just discover things as I go, which is great too, but then you have to read more. Sometimes when you travel, you don't have that much time. But yeah, just, you know,
Yeah,
um,
I truly,
travel definitely broaden your horizon and
yeah,
open world to you.
I truly agree with you that traveling is one of the best education you can get, and people should not worry about language barriers because there is a universal way of communicating. I went through your website and Instagram, and you also did send few pictures. I want to just select few pictures, and you can describe the moment and what happened during this thing. One of the picture I selected, this one. I don't know if you
Uh,
see it.
we cannot see. We cannot see. I tell you, there's a reflection
Okay.
of this. I think for the moment we. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I think from this angle you can see. Yeah. So
Yeah. This one.
yes, you can see the older gentleman.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that way you cannot see the beauty of that image. And
Mm,
I say that not because I took the pictures, but this is actually very interesting. It's interesting, Alpha, that you picked that one, because the picture has a great story behind it, and
mm,
yeah, I can talk for hours about this image, about this story, but I give you the backstory of the whole trip.
mm,
So I did a piece that was like a personal work for me on people of Garifuna. I don't know if you ever heard about them. I have not, until I end up in Honduras.
mm,
Uh, so this is the people of Garifuna were brought as a slave from Africa to. They brought them on the ship, as the slaves were brought to, I think, Central America, and the ship went ashore, sank, and those people never end up being a slave. They end up, just a lot of them went ashore, and from what I know, they settled down in Honduras, and some of them lives in Belize, but mostly in Honduras, some in Belize, and you can find them also on the Honduran island of Roatan. So those are descendants of those Africans brought to the Central Americans during the slavery time, and they live right now. So they have their own diaspora, their own culture and language, and if you go to Garifuna village in where I went in Honduras, the women are still carrying the stuff on their heads like in Africa. They dress up in African way. I mean, at least those people who still cherish and try to preserve their uniqueness. So they live in Latin America, in a central Spanish-speaking country, but they have their own language called Garifuna language. Unfortunately, younger generation is less and less interested in learning that language. They all switch to Spanish because that's how it is taught in at school. But there is in those villages where there is more of Garifuna people. I even talked to the teacher. She's still teaching the Garifuna language at the school. So they still trying to preserve their uniqueness, their ethnicity and the cultural uniqueness. So I wonder, and I was got really interested in them, and I spent some times with them. I don't speak Spanish, nor Garifuna language for that matter, but I have a friends who were helping me. And then the second time I went there, I went with my Spanish speaking girlfriend, and we end up in this beautiful end of the world fisherman village. Not everybody were from Garifuna over there, but it was a village with no electricity, no running water. I to that day, and that's happened maybe 10, 12 years ago. To that day, I still consider that week I spent over there with those people one of my happiest week of my life, because the life was stripped to the basic. The main thing was, what are we gonna eat today? Either we're gonna go with the fishermen and fish some fish, and then we're gonna have a fish, rice, and beans. And if we don't catch anything, we're gonna have just rice and beans and fried plantains. And yeah, so it was so eye-opening that we're living with our problems of new iPhones upgrade, this and that, and tariffs and inflation and this and that, and then people in most of the worlds, they still living with a very basic condition, and the life goes on over there. They are happy. they
Mm.
they they at least at this village, probably right now they do have electricity, because they were plan of bringing electricity over there, and I'm pretty sure that's gonna like turn upside down their world, because with electricity the TV will come, internet will come, and so on. But when I was there, this still wasn't there, and you could experience the life at its core. And those people were so open and so friendly and so inviting. They have very little or almost nothing. And this particular gentleman, I didn't know this story. So there was this building, communal building in this small village. When they open, sometimes when they have like more tourists coming or something was happening. But to get to that village, there was only one bus, which in fact was just a small minibus, right? And it was coming once a day and then taking people back and forth. I mean, actually twice a day, yeah, in the morning and in the evening, to take them out if they needed to go to the bigger city to shop, and then they bring them back. Um, but every morning when we stay at one of the fishermen, he had a spare room for us to stay. So every morning when I was going, explore the village and go to photograph the Garifuna people, I would pass next that communal building, and there was gentlemen sleeping on the stair of that building outside. It's a warm weather, and one day he was sitting in this beautiful light. You cannot see, on this, people cannot see on the screen, but you can see that picture. And I asked him again, without language, just the body language and nodding and showing the camera. I asked him if I can take a picture of him, and he posed for me. And and I love that image. The light was beautiful. This his face. It was the older fisherman, old fisherman, and the face uh, was to me saying all the stories which he could have told me if we were able to communicate. But I'm pretty sure that he had a uh, plenty story to tell. And and sadly, I think So, and I was thinking about it that probably he felt so he looks and seems to be happy that I show interest in him and I photograph him. I don't think many people, those people don't live, and not, for sure not him with the iPhone cameras and not taking selfies or not being photographed. So I think that was probably one of the very few pictures of him ever taken, and he posed for me, and I always feel this as a gift given to me by those people when they post for me, that they share some of their life with me. And then a few days later I was passing by and he was still laying on that stairs of that building. And then when we came back the evening, he was still there, and they told me that he died.
Mm,
So that was pretty much the last pictures of him taken alive, like
mm,
2 days later he died. And we tried to find out what happened, because I was, took the pictures of him maybe like 2 days ago or day ago, and we had a little conversation, with my girlfriend being an interpreter translating for me. And that was so sudden that he just one day didn't wake up on that stairs where he was living and sleeping outside. And in the locals, it was also an interesting approach. Locals, how they approach the dead and life, and they just say, "Oh, he was just old. It was his time." And
mm,
so that story just, yeah, for me, it's so much meaning. How fleeting our life is, how some people, just have this very stoic approach to life and death
mm,
as just a thing which has happened one day. He was there one day sitting on the stairs, the next day he wasn't. And then it was so interesting in a way. The story was sad, right? The fisherman died. I took the Most likely there was nobody else taking pictures over there, so that was his last picture ever taken, and he looks happy and pleasant on this image, and peaceful. Uh, and then the whole village, maybe I don't know, 50 people, however it was, they decide that they're gonna go for the funeral. Now there was a whole story with that. So they covered the body, and they were waiting. The body was waiting their whole year for, I mean, a whole year, I'm sorry, a whole day for that minibus to come and to take the body. And then the whole village left because because at the same time in the nearest town, some rich woman, local woman, die. So they knew that the family of that rich woman will throw the big feast and the big party, and they're gonna bury this poor fisherman who didn't have any family. By the way, so they were going kind of it was so interesting to see how people, and that was the whole excitement in the village, that everybody are going to the funeral. So not this gentleman, yes, but he was poor, so nobody's gonna throw any feast at the end of the funeral, but they knew that there was somebody else die, and it's going to be a bigger feast and party, and as a social way of social gathering and everything. So
mm.
yeah, that's like a short condensed story of that image. But yeah, that it's not just a random image I took of the person who never, because sometimes when you travel you just come across, you're passing by and you see someone beautiful, someone interesting, and I ask them if I can take a picture of them, and I never, and there's no other follow-up story to that image. But yeah, there was one image I took of him, and there was a whole story unfold later on,
Yeah.
which took a couple days. Unfortunately, like I said, the story involved the fact that he died the 2 days later, I think, after I took that picture.
Yeah, there are a lot of beautiful pictures you sent, but due to time, I will encourage the people who may listen to this conversation, maybe to go to your website or Instagram. And finally, at the end of our conversation, I will ask you about that. But if a young photographer came to you today and wanna advise, what advice are you going to give to him or her? And my last question will be: do you think a photography is a dying profession, considering the fact the AI and all these facilities of taking pictures?
Um, Two question. So maybe I start with the last one, as far as AI. This is a very interesting and in a way very disturbing question because we have AI. I ask myself the same question. Uh, you have AI which you can ask to create any photography, but I think the photography will be still there. And even more so, I think it's going to be important, especially with AI, when we don't know what's real or what's not real. So, in a way, there's those deep fakes and there's the pictures which are manipulated by AI, or you can ask AI to create the pictures. But the question is, will people really want to look at those pictures, or they want to see the real deal, real life? Even right now, as far as the artists, the AI for sure it's going to wipe out majority of jobs in general. There's no question about it, and if you're smart, you know that, and it is scary to know that, because this is going to be the huge shift and change in our lives, and we'll have to rethink our life. But I also heard something which is very important, that those creative jobs, they will still stay, the jobs with a human element. Sure, you can ask AI to create a painting or create a photograph or create a piece of art, and it will. But people will still pay money for the uniqueness of human things. So I would not recommend photography as a way of living. If you are really good, if you are really passionate, and you will be able to, I think, to live off of that. And I don't think that actual real photography will ever cease to exist because of the AI, because again, there is this element of truth in the real photography. I was always, there was no Photoshop even before, so we could manipulate the images or change them even before AI. I think with AI and those engines and everything, those things just become way more easy to do so. But as it is right now, I know already that it is that people who buy art, they want to have certificate from the artist that it was done or created without any usage of AI. So I think that there's always going to be a market for the human creation, and can AI take a pictures, or create the pictures of the gentleman like I did? I'm pretty sure it can, if you give them right prompt and describe what you want, but there won't be authenticity behind that pictures. Yeah, that's good. It's not. This is not a robot who went out, unless we're gonna have humanoids robot with the cameras, and they're gonna go around and document and photograph the life as it's happening. So for me, uh, it's really the question boils down to what you want from the photography. You want some nice looking, picture to hang on the wall, or you want to have pictures, nice looking still pictures, which actually happen, the frozen moment in time. So I think the photography was always about freezing the actual moment in time. And what distinguished photographers was that, like I told you at the beginning, you can photograph the same moment in very different ways. And that's what distinguished photographers. With AI, like I say, it can be created exactly the same way, but it's not gonna be actual the real moment frozen in time. So now
Mm.
I would just, I don't know if I answered the question between the real photography or AI creation. So it really depends what you want. You know, you can go to IKEA even right now and you can buy some artwork from IKEA for $20, or you can seek for, you know, uh, for yourself the actual painting and actual, you know, uh, artisan, and obviously you're gonna pay $2,000 or more for his creation. So it always depends what people are going to seek in photography or AI created. It's hard to say if those are pictures, you know, AI created images. Um, and as far as the what advice I would go to the young photographer, well, first of all, as we already mentioned to this, have a plan B. What if the photography won't work out? So so I don't wanna send or convince anybody to get into being a photographer, because that's not like I mentioned already, that's not some you know, jobs which is gonna give you God knows how much money, but it can give you satisfaction. So I think even if you want to develop photography as your hobby, uh, the main advice, even if you want to think about, you know, making money off of photography or hobby or passion or anything, just focus mainly on creating your own voice, your own way of seeing things, and your own way of expressing yourself. Because I think that's what is great about photography. That is a catalysator, in a way, like a filter through which we express ourselves. You know, because again, how I say, you know, 10 people can photograph the same event, the same tree, 10 different ways. It all depends on their experience, on the way of seeing the life, and experiencing and thinking about life, and on those images. So that's my main advice. Yeah, of course, you know, learn the basic, learn the technicalities and everything, but focus on your way of expressing yourself, the way you see the reality and the world, and create your own unique style. And either if you think about making money of a photography, or just having this as a hobby, or as a display of your unique memories or something, try to make them your own unique personal way of seeing the world.
I
And
see.
then there's not going to be any AI who can take those memories and the way of seeing the words from you.
I see. Again, Mr. Sebastian, thank you very much for sharing your time and your knowledge about photography and joining me under the human right tree. But before we end this conversation, if somebody wanna see your work, where should they go to see your pictures?
Well, Alpha, so first of all, yeah, thank you for having me here. Always pleasure talking with you. And if you see some of my work, unfortunately, I am not very present on social media. I should be. But you can Google me on Instagram or Facebook using my first and last name. So on Instagram would be Sebastian Kowalski, Kowalski, photography, or Sebastian Kowalski photographer. I have a few Instagram account, and the same way you can find me on Facebook, Sebastian Kowalski photography. And yeah,
Do you have a
if you
website?
want to, I'm sorry.
Do
Well,
you?
at this moment, actually, it was the same, sebastiankowalski.com, but
Mm,
I don't think it's actually up right now. I'm trying
okay.
to rework on it, so I would not send you there right now. But now, mostly Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. All right, Mr. Sebastian, thank you very much for sharing your time. It was a pleasure talking
Thank you
to
so
you
much.
about your work and look forward to keeping in touch.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care.